The following program is brought to you by a Heroes Nation podcast app, a BMG production.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Robert Griswold, Ready Made Resources. We're brought to you by heroesnation.tv, and you can find it at heroesnation.tv. Tony over there has a wonderful platform with a lot of really interesting guests on. So we suggest that not only maybe to go listen to this interview that I'm going to have, but some of my previous interviews, and then also listen to some other people that have, been around the world, know a thing or two, and maybe can share those with you. So anyhow, heroesnation.tv. And again, my company is readymaderesources.com. We have over 5,000 different products on our website. So you can go to the website at readymaderesources.com or call us at 800-627-3809. We've been in business since 1992, so we've been around a while. I've had some unique experiences around the world, and I can share my experiences maybe to help you out, also to maybe do some planning for prepping so that you don't spend money where it doesn't need to be spent or overspend. I talk to so many people that buy stuff and then they find out, well, that's not going to be applicable for my situation. It doesn't work. Maybe because the temperature's too cold, too hot, or got elderly or young people that it's not going to work for. Food intolerances, all these things that people maybe not consider when they go to start doing some preparations for possible, societal issues. And if you talk to someone who's been through it a lot, they can probably direct your money in the correct way, so you don't look back and go, gosh, I wish I hadn't bought that. I could use that for something else more important. So anyhow, if you give us a call at 800-627-3809, we'd be glad to help you out with whatever you're looking to do. We do carry a lot of night vision, a lot of radio equipment, major food brands, water filtration, solar energy, a lot of books and videos, homesteading supplies. We ourselves live on a 40-acre homestead, and, we enjoy the homestead life. Also, I want to mention that in a few days, the 17th through the 20th, we are going to have Doug Thornton, former DHS agent and Marine, here teaching an active shooter class along with Steve Reyes. He's an 18 Delta medic, a Green Beret medic, and he'll be teaching the TCCC course, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. They'll be working together. And so those 4 days are available. If you're interested in that course, there's still some slots left. And you can go to readymaderesources.com. Across the top of the website, it actually shows a little button you can click where you can train and take that course, and you can sign up for it right there. It's filling up quick, so if you're interested, maybe you need to go. There's lots of accommodations around here. We do allow a certain amount of people who want to actually camp out on the property because there's an area to camp out. So anyhow, if you're interested in that, readymaderesources.com or 800-627-3809. The guest I have today, I've known him for years. We've talked a bit. We've bought back and forth. He's bought things from me and I've bought things from him. Specifically, he has some really good books out and information. His website, and I suggest for the price you're going to pay, I think it's $10 a month. For a membership to ForwardObserver.com, where you're going to get the intelligence briefings from a former Army intel officer, which I'm going to let him explain that to you. And I'm telling you, you read a lot of stuff out there, that uses a lot of hyperbole and exaggerations and speculations. But Mike is trained in giving you just the facts, as Joe Friday used to say from Dragnet, just the facts. And so, I would highly recommend you going to ForwardObserver.com, looking it over, and consider joining for that $10 a month. And I'm telling you, if you do, you're going to get all kinds of neat things that are going to be put in your inbox every day, and you can stay alert to the fact of what's going on. And intelligence, it is knowing events before they're going to happen, or before the herd knows the events are going to happen. You can position yourself to better, acquire what you need to acquire, or put yourself in a place where you need to be put. I mean, if you know there's going to be a run on something ahead of time, you can get that before the mob gets there. If you know that an event's going to happen, you can put yourself in a place of safety more than other people are going to be caught out in the open. So without any more ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, Mike Shelby from Forward Observer. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Bob. How are you? I'm doing well,
doing
thanks.
Great. Yeah. So why don't you, I did a little bit of description about you, but I know you have a military career, military background. Why don't you go ahead and describe yourself to our listeners just a bit?
Yeah, sure. I was not an officer. I was an NCO, so a lowly sergeant. But yeah, I got out and became a contractor. And all told, I spent 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, both with the Army and as a contractor. And then in ETS in 2012, because I was I was just burnt out going back and forth. And I was also very concerned because a lot of the things that we were pioneering in Iraq and Afghanistan were making their way back to domestic law enforcement, federal law enforcement. I just said, man, I don't know about this. I didn't like the path we were going down. And so I was way early on getting out, but I got out and became a fly fishing guide for a couple of years just to kind of decompress. And I tell you, I could not leave the intelligence world, and I didn't want to go back to work for the government, and definitely not going back to the military. So I started Forward Observer in 2016, and I started writing intel briefs. Started in earnest. I went full time in 2016, and we've grown. We have 6 full-time analysts, including myself, and we produce a daily intel brief called Daily SA, or Daily Situational Awareness, and it is an intel brief on domestic disruption and geopolitical risk. We talk about things that can go wrong before they go wrong.
You mentioned something that you didn't like what you saw about, what was happening and as far as what was going on in Iraq brought over here into domestic law enforcement. Can you elaborate on that just a bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, counterinsurgency tactics for one, biometrics for two. I was on a team that used biometrics to target bomb builders and other people. And, I noticed that, not only in the GWAT world, but in the post 9/11 world, we've seen even back then in, 2000, late 2000s into the early 2010s and up to today, when we see law enforcement taking buccal swabs, taking DNA from misdemeanor arrests, like you haven't even been convicted of anything. And, they're taking buccal swabs, and apparently that's constitutional. And so just, fingerprints, and then being able to, cross that with geolocation data and, everything you do on the web. I mean, we're, we're an inch away from the panopticon because there's just so much information out there. And if I'm trying to target somebody and we live in this information rich environment, and I can just, pull up all your information, I can build a pattern of life for you. Like we're going to find you if we want to, if the state can pony up enough resources, you're eventually going to be tracked down. There's just there's not a lot of good ways to hide anymore.
Yeah. Gosh, you mentioned patterns of life, but, and we all have them. And I was just reading, like with artificial intelligence online, its ability with this new website, Chat GPT, its ability to go in and not only every email you've ever written, every FaceTime you've ever done, all the websites you visited, everything you've ever bought, all your emotional states of when you type things, say questions, ask things, your political status, your marriage status, your sexual status, all those things. Quantum computing has the ability to compress those in seconds and profile you. I mean, that's an intellect that really you'd be hard pressed to come against that. So what would somebody do to if knowing that this monster we've created, a great intelligence apparatus, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, plus all the other things. What does somebody do to maintain a certain level of privacy? If you can.
There's standard, digital security and privacy tools, and I'm all for those. I would say don't do anything online that you wouldn't, want want the world knowing. I mean, I wouldn't do anything online that, you wouldn't put on social media, because that's about how accessible it is for a determined adversary, if they're trying to collect information from you. And I would say, with very few caveats, the internet's just not a safe place. I mean, it is not a secure or private place.
Yeah, not at all. So, so you would say, what would you limit your access to social media, and limit how much you put on it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you should definitely limit what you put on there. I think everyone should have a social media account. You don't necessarily have to use your real name, and don't post pictures of your family on there. But it's a great information gathering tool. Yeah, we can get into a lot of different scenarios. I mean, you can build a persona online, and maybe throw an analyst off for a little while, but there's a lot of uses of disinformation and deception uses you can put on social media, but that's everything's just situation dependent.
I have a comment on this, that the intelligence agencies, they have satellite intelligence, they have radio intercept intelligence, they have human intelligence. I've read, and maybe you can comment on it, that 80% of intelligence that the intelligence agency used is basically open source intelligence. I can get it as easy as they can get it. Is that true?
It's no longer true. That was true about 20 years ago. Today, it's probably 95% open source. Just the availability of social media, especially if Iraqis and Afghans had used Facebook and Twitter as ubiquitously as the average American does, we probably could have wrapped up those conflicts in about 3 months. And I'm really not even joking about that.
Yeah, that's something. So now, tell me, you have one book out, and I know we've sold hundreds and hundreds of copies of it, the SHTF plan book. Why don't you go ahead and describe that? Because I think everybody should have this book. It is really a practical guide to what you do as far as an area study. And I'm just going to say this, we talked about this before the program. I'm a big radio guy. If you look over here, I've got a bunch of radios. Behind me, I've got a bunch of radios. And I always tell people that want to buy radios, 90% of what you should do is listen, not talk. I want to know what, Mike's saying and what Mike's thinking and what Mike's got. I don't want him to know what I've got and what I'm doing and what I'm thinking. So I use my radios here as intelligence gathering information. And I'm really surprised at what people will say on the radio. I mean, they think it's private, and it's like, gosh, 1 million people just heard this, and probably people have recorded it, and, it's never going away. I'm always this big thing, because we know a lot of people think a societal collapse is coming of some degree or another. I am one of those people that think we can't go on the way we're going on. But I'm also fond of saying, as far as local intelligence, like you stressed so many times, I know you've made a lot of memes about area study. We have 10,000 guns and all these other things we have, but we don't know, where our water supplies are, how our electricity is provided, where our food comes from, any of that. And so I say to people, if the zombies are eating people in New York, and I don't really, believe in zombies, but, if they're eating people in New York and I'm in Tellico Plains, really, it's not going to affect me that much. I think New York is probably one of the main manufacturing hubs of zombies to begin with, but if zombies are eating people in Tellico Plains, I better know about it. I better know where they're coming from and what I need to do about it. So why don't you just give a brief description of what that book details? And I want to talk to you about your new book also. So if you could do that, because we have the book for sale. I know you can get it right off Forward Observer, directly from him. And it's one of those books that needs to be a permanent fixture in your library that you'll reference more than once. We all love to read dystopian novels about the end of the world and how one hero character lives and, saves everybody. But they're fun to read, but that's not reality. The reality is you're going to need to know how to do specific things at specific times, information to gather. And this is what the STH book does cover. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and describe that book a bit?
Yeah, back in 2015, I self-published a book called SHTF Intelligence, an Intelligence Guide to Community Security. And it's about local information gathering. And, we all are going to have blind spots. That's why we need intelligence. We need information. And then we need to sort that information out to good, bad, and ugly information that's accurate or to the best of our knowledge, accurate, more likely to be true or less likely to be true. So separate the good, bad, and the ugly information, and then produce intelligence and then make decisions on that intelligence. And you look at militaries and governments, they shouldn't be making decisions on information. Information is notoriously wrong. And so, first we need to determine what's right, what information is correct and accurate. And then we need to look at what our mission is and say, okay, well, what are our intelligence gaps for this mission? And we get our intelligence gaps, and now we have collection requirements. And our collection requirements are specific pieces of information that we need to go out and gather. And there's a big focus on what's going on in China or with North Korea, what's going on in Ukraine or, wherever. And my message is pretty simple. Like, I'm not saying that stuff's I'm not saying it's not important, but, think about your mission. Your mission's local. Your mission's not in Beijing or South Korea or wherever. And so I recommend this in that book, especially. I mean, I really started trying to bang this drum is 60-30-10. 60% of your time consuming intelligence information should be local. What's going on, down the street at your city council, in local emergency services, so on and so forth. 30% of your time should be at the county and state level, and then about 10% of your time at the national strategic level. One reason why I started Forward Observer is because we can fill in those national strategic gaps. We can inform you what's happening at the national strategic level. We can't inform you what's happening at your local level. This is your job. There's just too many local levels for us to be able to do. And so, we hear a lot about preparedness and preparing for an EMP and a stock market collapse and societal collapse and all these things. And I guess I don't know if it's a paradox or irony, but I guess the irony is that you're not actually preparing for an EMP. You're preparing for the follow-on effects of the EMP. And so if you don't understand those local follow-on effects, then you're really not preparing for the right things. And so I wrote SHTF Intelligence as a guide to direct people towards those right things, specifically at the local level. What are your intelligence gaps? Do a threat assessment, threat analysis, analyze your operational environment, the area around you, form some conclusions, and that will tell you exactly what you should be preparing for.
Can you give me just a few of the data points people need to be looking at in their local area? I mean, political, infrastructure, whatever it is. So, I mean, I just know, recently, like Moore County and Washington, all these other places we've seen these electrical outages, people don't prepare what the, effects of a power outage are. And there's not only just a certain set of, there's immediate impact of power going out, but there's also, midterm and long-term effects if power stays out. And the longer it stays out, the more ramification has on your survival. So would you just maybe go touch a few of those high points?
Yeah, let's talk about threat analysis. There are 4 categories of threats. And number 1 is conventional threats. So the police state, standing army, occupation army. After that's the irregular threat. So gangs, mobs, looters, people who have de facto authority, not de jure. They're not the legal authority. It's like Captain Phillips, that little Somali dude pointing the gun at you. I'm the captain now. And that's de facto authority. Those are regular threats. There are catastrophic threats like hurricanes or pandemics, chemical, biological, radiological, so on. And then there are disruptive threats. And, it could be weather, it could be, a 5-hour power outage. These are things that are going to disrupt your operations. Clausewitz called this, I think it was Clausewitz, called this friction. And, there's internal and external friction. And, things don't always go according to plan. There are disruptive threats out there that you need to account for, because that's going to slow you down and negatively affect your operations. And so those are the 4 threat categories. I can go in a little bit deeper, if you want, and talk about kind of the operating environment, and the 6 layers of that if you want. But doing a quick, at least doing a quick threat assessment, I would say is step number 1. And I say quick as like, like a hasty fighting position is better than no fighting position. But, you really want a prepared fighting position. So you really want to take some time and do a local threat analysis, because the more stones you uncover, the more little pieces of information you're probably going to find that you didn't realize were out there.
So, and then, properly understanding them. I use an example at times. If I see two guys beating each other up at the park, that's just raw intelligence. And I'll maybe explain this a little bit. You see something going on, but if you try to go solve that or interdict in that problem, you don't know if it's a drug deal gone bad. You don't know if it's a love triangle gone bad. You don't know if it's somebody just gave a one-arm salute, a one-finger salute while the other guy's driving down the road. And if you don't understand that properly, if I think it's a drug deal that's gone bad, but it's really a love triangle that's gone bad, and I'm trying to fix a problem that's not a problem, that doesn't work well, does it? Correct understanding of the situation is critically important. You can observe a situation and not understand it. That's what I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big focus on developing situational awareness, which is great. That is not the end of that journey. Situational understanding, which you said exactly what you said. That's the next thing. Is I'm aware that this is happening. That that's one thing, and now I understand why this is happening, or I understand what is going to happen next, and that's kind of the natural progression. Situational awareness is not enough.
Yes. Okay. In the light of, then we'll explain it. Maybe I want you to explain it. OODA loop. How does that work into all of this? And maybe you can describe to the listeners what OODA loop is.
Sure. Yeah, that was a process first described by Colonel John Boyd. And he was an Air Force fighter pilot. And this is a pretty much universal human decision-making process. And this applies to fighter pilots, who really rely on split-second decisions. If you're taking a high-end, tactical shooting course, they may have talked about an OODA loop. My message is OODA loop pertains to you on an individual level and also on an organizational level. And so OODA is the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. It is a loop. So after you act, you still have to observe what happens next, and then orient to what has happened, and then decide what you're going to do, and then execute. And I liken it to, you're driving up a hill on the interstate and you observe brake lights in front of you. Now you have to orient yourself. How far this is ahead of me? How fast am I going? Do I need to slam on the brakes? Do I need to swerve off the road? Do I just need to let off the gas? And so, you have a range of options. You decide what you're going to do, and then you act. And one reason why driving while intoxicated is bad is because it disrupts your OODA loop. It slows down your observation and orientation and decision and act phase. And so, if I'm looking at an adversary, my question is, how do I disrupt his OODA loop? I want my OODA spinning faster than his. That's how you win fights. This also applies to us on an organizational level, which is, fundamentally OODA, we're talking about intelligence and operations. So in the Army, it's a 2-shop and a 3-shop, two distinct organizations, basically. Observe and orient is in the intelligence part of the cycle. So observe is intelligence gathering. Orient is intelligence analysis. You must have both. And then you have decide and act, which are two functions of operations. You cannot decide and act if you do not have observe and orient. So you can, but you're not going to be successful. And, there's this massive interest in tactical training and, developing self-defense or warfighting capabilities and intelligence. You got to front load the intelligence here. So whether we're talking about emergency preparedness or community security, if you don't have that ability to observe and orient, your decide and act is going to be slower. It's going to be wrong. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong decision, wrong action. And that is not a viable strategy.
It's really good you point that out, because a lot of people don't deduce that, and it is important. The first two elements of the OODA loop they're non-action elements. You're not going to be the bull in the china shop without thinking. You've got to do some thinking before you decide and act. And acting is really the kinetic part of that, where that's when you put all the other three, which, all the other three are not kinetic. the kinetic one is at the end. How am I going to apply force or whatever I need to apply to the situation to come about a result that's going to benefit me? And it's like you said, I want to become Rambo. I want to learn how to go into a building and shoot everybody. But without doing the proper analysis, I think one of the really dangerous things that a lot of people do, they carry a gun, but they've never been trained to analyze the situation before they maybe pull their gun out and shoot. And that you can end up with some very bad results if you do that. And being able to do that under pressure, under threat, being able to orient to it, making the proper intelligence assessments. Okay, this is the situation. This is the real problem right here. What am I going to do about it? And that can change. I mean, if I was in the mall and an active shooter went on, and I was with my family, my first priority is to get my family out. That's my decision. I'm going to observe, orient. My decision is to get my family out. Then I'm going to act on that, or at least have them exfil the building, somehow get out of it. If I was by myself and I felt I could gain tactical advantage by observing and orienting, make a decision and act on it, I would maybe do that. But each situation can change. I use an example at times. If I'm driving by Walmart and I see maybe an ambulance and a police car out there, I'm going to think somebody's had an accident. Maybe, there's a heart attack or something like that. But if I drive by Walmart and see, 5 ambulances and a dozen police cars out there, I mean, that whole thing, I'm going to start thinking, well, active shooter. And then what I'm going to do about it. And if there's just a heart attack, I might still go into Walmart and do my shopping, try to be careful, see what happened. But if I see a dozen police cars out there and a bunch of ambulances, I'm not getting anywhere near that place, and that's an OODA loop right there. I made observed, oriented decision, and my action was get the heck out of there. Don't go. No, it's not worth it. Curiosity is going to kill the cat. Don't do it. So, that is so important for people to do that. And, I know it takes time to develop those assets in your brain. You just don't do it all of a sudden. I had an intelligence guy tell me one time, I want you to watch a movie, any movie, it can be whatever, Chuck Norris beating somebody up or some guy kissing a girl, whatever, that's a love story or action movie. And I don't want you to watch what they want you to watch. They want you to watch the guy kissing the girl. They want you to watch Chuck Norris smashing somebody's snot locker in, But watch the shadows, watch the cars, watch all the peripheral things happening in the background, and then I'm going to quiz you on it. And man, that was a physically mind-bending task. And I don't know, when you learn to act that way, it changes your perception of what's going on around you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's a mindset. Just understanding what intelligence value is and being able to train yourself to look for the pieces of information that have intelligence value. It's a software upgrade. Everyone wants, toys are great. I bought several, I bought night vision from you and all sorts of stuff from you. And I like toys and gear and everything, but you got to upgrade the software. Toys are cool, but upgraded software is going to greatly expand your ability to use those things.
If you don't understand OODA loop, night vision is not going to be very good. Because again, night vision allows you to observe and orient at night. But if you don't do that and you just see something going on and you don't make a proper evaluation of what really is going on, which takes maybe a little bit of time to observe and orient to it, then you can make some very bad decisions, some that would get you into deep legal problems. So again, night vision is a great tool. I recommend it all the time. But there are people out there that'll train you with it. And I know I did some training with John Lovell and he did night vision. And that was one of the things you did. We didn't engage. We did recon. You went out, we had 2 teams. One team was at base camp, bad guys. And we had to sit there and recon them and write down the intelligence. And then we broke contact with them. And we had to come back and analyze the intelligence of what we saw. And later on, we went back and did our thing. It was a training scenario. But, we write down what you see. Write it down. Take notes. Remember, what are they doing? Their salute report. What's the size? What uniforms? What equipment? All that stuff they have. And then come back and we can make a plan of attack on it. and again, fools rush in where angels fear to tread, and you can have that night vision, just rush into that situation and probably won't work out too well for you. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. I would add also, on an organizational level, I mean, this exists on a mutual aid group or a preparedness group or a neighborhood watch. Every person in your group is a sensor, and this is applicable to the team scenario as well. And if they are out there even passively seeing things, hearing things, or experiencing things, and they're not passing that information on to you, as you are the intel guy or the S2, if they're not doing that, that's a failure on your part. And a lot of these people, I mean, they don't, they're not born with this type of mindset. That's something we have to ingrain in people as well, to go out and at a minimum be passive collectors and then pass that information up. And, you don't think, I don't know, maybe I don't think the average person thinks about, Grandma Methuselah sitting on her front porch as an intelligence collector, but she could be, she should be.
Absolutely.
Or whoever else in your neighborhood, people who are people who aren't 20 years old anymore, who don't run a 14-minute 2 mile, and and they said, I need something to do. I want something to do. Hey, go look at things. Go drive over here. Go walk down here. Report back what you see. Intelligence gathering is it's an everybody job, really, is what it is.
Exactly. And also, just in everyday life, walking around, going about your daily business, doing that intelligence gathering, that's part of OODA loop, observe and orient, and it can keep you out of a lot of trouble. It is a mindset. And that's what watching that movie, and I've done it several times. I've also showed it to other people, watching the shadows. Shadows tell times of day, what things going on, cars, clothes. It gives you a broad idea, not just what maybe you're supposed to look at, the distraction, but looking at the whole environment. And in doing that, it really changed the way, I kind of look at the world. I mean, when I walk outside of a store, I'm not looking directly at my car. I'm making a complete observation of the entire area, looking for any threats to my right or my left, my flanks, my forward, up, down, all of it, just to see. And I think when you do that, it really improves your ability to survive what somebody else might have planned for you. And so just that goes, the STH plan book, I highly recommend it. Forward Observer, I highly recommend joining. A couple other things. You're coming out with a new book, the Area Intelligence Handbook. When is that going to be available? And then describe what it is.
Yeah, that's going to be published by late February. I don't have an exact date yet, but we're doing line editing right now. And then I get sent off for layout and then off to the publisher. So probably a few weeks away, maybe. That book, it's a soup to nuts, start to finish guide to building an area study. And,
excuse me, just for people's understanding, define an area study.
Yeah, an area study is, it's a document that has a lot of information in it. It's a methodical, systematic process, and so we're making sure we covering all of our bases. It's built around the mission. So I have a whole chapter in there about mission analysis, how to determine what your mission is. If you don't understand the mission, you can't support it with intelligence. So everything starts with the mission, and then once we actually understand, okay, here are the threats. There's a chapter on threat analysis. Here are the threats. Here's the mission. Here's what we need to do about it. And now here are our intelligence gaps. Here are intelligence requirements. Now we can start to analyze the local area or the operating environment, the area of operations, wherever you are going to be. We can start gathering that information and then forming conclusions about aspects of the area that are going to positively affect us or negatively affect us. I will say there's a common misconception among some people in the preparedness community. And they say, well, I've lived here for 20 years. I don't need to do an area study. And it's false. Number one, even if you are the world's foremost expert on your locality, dude, there's no guarantee that you're not going to get slumped over a fence post tomorrow morning. And then what good is all that knowledge going to do your family, your group? It's not going to do them any good. So we got to write it down, and we have to put it into a consumable format. Number two, really is it's a community enhancer. You know, if something were to go wrong and all of a sudden I've got 5 or 10 dudes showing up and saying, hey, I don't know what to do, but I want to do it because I care about the community. I want everyone to be safe. Boom, flip open the area study. Say, hey, here are the things that we need to watch out for. I've already thought through this. And once people realize that, oh, this guy's actually kind of put together, like they're a lot more likely to follow you than someone else. And then, 3, it's the area study is not just a collection of information. It is a blueprint. You do an area study and you're going to find things that you need to be preparing for. And I hear from students all the time. They said, oh, they took an area study course from me, or they went to an area study workshop. And they say, I've lived here for a long time. I learned things doing this area study using your format. I've learned things that I had never even thought about before.
And this will be in the new book, correct?
Yeah. It's all in the new book. And I'll tell you, I stress in the very beginning of the book, the area study is a blueprint. I really focus very heavily, because the next step after you do an area study, start building your intelligence network. And it's a lot easier to build an intelligence network once you've already done your area study. And so that's, we want to front load the best foundations possible. The best foundation you can have is having a complete area study. Then you start to go out and you build your network, you build your tribe, you expand, and then you start to build political, social, and economic power at the local level. And that's how you get from a bad situation to a pretty good situation, regardless of what happens in the future.
So let me ask you a question. So everybody's an individual Rambo. There's no community cohesiveness here. Everybody, let's say the worst case scenarios happen, and I've got all my stuff and everybody else has got all them stuff, but there's no cohesiveness to it. How long before a warlord comes into that community and absolutely dominates it?
I think there are warlords active today. Inner cities, they live by the code of the streets. There's an individual who owns entire city blocks. There are places where police don't go. In a rural area. Yeah, not long. I mean, in a rural area. So the thing is, those power dynamics already exist. You don't think of your sheriff as a warlord, but when, if there's a grid down or the societal collapse, like that guy has the authority. He's got the manpower. In a lot of places, that's probably going to be the local warlord. But like I live in Central Texas. We got cartels moving the border north, cartels pushing ranchers off their land and getting more involved in operations in the United States and pushing drugs and human trafficking and all sorts of stuff. And man, that it doesn't keep me up at night, but that really worries me about the future. Basically whatever they call it, the cartelization of the United States. I mean, that's what we need to be preparing for in some places, especially if you live rurally.
Well, we're coming up on the time frame here, but I want to throw the last question I mentioned to you beforehand. So we're living in some very unique times. I was overseas and I was in China a lot, and, I know their level of infiltration in the United States. It's extensive. Universities definitely are political. Definitely they're buying land. They're buying businesses. So they have this. This is just one element of the infiltration in the United States. We see the news media is absolutely sold out to a social Marxist philosophy, and what truth is, it's just total propaganda. There's no truth to it at all. And you remember Tass and Pravda, news and truth. In the news, there's no truth, and in the truth, there's no news. That was the joke in the Soviet Union. Education has been completely taken over. It seems like by some real whack job people that want to emasculate your children. Our food industry is taken over by profits. Our medical industry. I mean, we just saw 3 years of absolute propaganda. The infrastructure of the United States, all this stuff that's going on right now, which I look at it, it's really pretty much pegging the Richter scale, a lot of it. So when you add all that together, 2 questions. One, is that a situation? Because all those, one of them is to me a major problem, but all those put together, plus other things, with AI thrown in there, that you really, and I think in a few years, you're not going to even know what to believe, what you read on the internet, because AI will be generating, they say, 90% of all internet content. But doing that, first of all, what does the individual do in the light of a government where you see all this stuff happening, which is basically anti-people, anti-freedom, anti-liberty, all that? And 2, is it redeemable? Can we turn that around? And those would be the last two questions.
Well, I think anything is possible with the Lord's blessing. I mean, it would not be the first time that that the Lord blessed this continent, really, at least this country. Delivering us from tyranny in one case. So I don't think it's irredeemable. I think most places is just not going to happen. Just being a realist, there's a cultural revolution going on. This is part of low intensity conflict. By the way, this is oddly enough the topic of my next book, and so I've done a lot of actually way more than a lot. I've done a massive amount of research into what these conflicts have looked like previously, and specifically in the modern era. And so when you have a revolutionary organization, which is exactly what we have here, they're not like a guerrilla, Marxist groups, sabotaging, power plants or whatever yet. That's probably a bad example. These aren't like your jungle Maoists yet is really what I mean to say. And so first you have to define the problem. Define the problem is always the first step. And so there's an ongoing cultural revolution, and these revolutions typically have 4 to 5 phases. So the first thing you want to do is that you want to identify which phase they're in. And, then you want to, we happen to be in the organizational phase of this. If you want to follow along kind of the Army's, where it's really kind of the special operations doctrine, they have 4 phases, but Mao, Giap, Ho Chi Minh, they had, 4, 5, 6 phases, all roughly the same. But, it goes organization to terrorism to guerrilla war to guerrilla war and insurgency to war of movement, conventional war. And that's when they actually start to take actual territory and defend it and become more conventional. But we're still way up in the front. We're still in the organizational phase. And if you study enough insurgencies, you will realize we're talking the French in Indochina and Algeria, the U.S. in Vietnam, U.S.-backed insurgencies and counterinsurgencies in Guatemala, El Salvador. In Africa. Literally everywhere. This is human nature we're dealing with. You can roll back a revolution or an insurgency when it's in the organizational phase. You just have to counter-organize. And this is something that we have not been very good at doing. And so one of the big reasons why I stress starting with a neighborhood watch and, expanding out your local intelligence network and then starting to build political, social, and economic power is because that is counter-organizing. And if you can better organize, if you can organize people better than the adversary, then you've got a much better chance at winning when you organize the people against an idea or against a local movement. And this, all they're doing is the reverse of that. And so, it really comes down to your ability to counter-organize. Can you do this? If you can, you have a fighting chance. If you cannot, you'll probably lose. And that's kind of the bottom line on, I know we're coming up on time. I can talk a lot more about this, but
go ahead and take a few more minutes.
We got to be able to do that. Okay. So
take a few more minutes.
Yeah. So, in the organizing phase, there's a big, the bottom, probably the most important thing to keep in the forefront of our mind is that violence alone does not win low intensity conflict. You cannot shoot your way to victory in low intensity conflict. The reason why these organizations, especially on the left, pursue low intensity conflict is because they do not have the stand up and fight capability of their adversaries. That's why they pursue, asymmetric or irregular means of warfare. And so we're talking about things like political warfare, information warfare, economic warfare, especially economic dislocation, getting people fired from their jobs over their political beliefs, limiting their career advancement, making them live in the shadows of their office, making them, not want to work in a place anymore because the place is so hostile to conservative values or conservative ideology. That is economic dislocation. They're dislocating you from income. That means you're going to make less money over the span of your life. It means your kids are going to be worse off. Your kids are not going to be, it's kind of a cyclical or systematic process, and it's deliberate. And so what we really need to do is we need to organize along political, social, and economic lines. And everyone wants to talk about grand strategy. Oh, what's a grand strategy for the country? Don't worry about the grand strategy for the country. You need to figure out what the grand strategy is for your local area, for your county, or for your city block. Like, start there. And the reason why I really promote political, social, and economic power is because that's where those are the three planes of conflict on low intensity conflict. I agree. Voting won't really change much nationally, but voting can actually still do a lot of good things locally. Building social power. This is kind of borrowing the concept from the socialists. They talk about dual power strategy. It's not enough to pursue electoral politics. They also have to build social power, and the two reinforce themselves. You build enough social power, you can get anyone elected you want. Once you can get anyone elected you want, you can pretty much do anything you want, including build a moat and ingrain yourself into local politics, become the machine. And then look at places like Chicago and New York and these other places. You can't oust these people from office. If you do succeed in ousting one, they're just going to replace with someone else from the machine. And they're very, very good at doing this. And I think we got to get good at this too. And then economic power, being able to employ your people, making sure that your people are taken care of, that they're not getting thrown out of their homes or starving to death. There's a really great story that David Kilcullen talks about in this book called Out of the Mountains. It's all about guerrilla warfare migrating from mountainous jungles to cities. And there's this group, I want to say it's in Jamaica. I think it was Kingston, Jamaica, called the Shower Posse. And this guy, the leader of the Shower Posse, once he took over, he got government contracts. He got local government contracts for waste disposal and kind of local work. And he employed his people. He used the means of government to get his people jobs, which improved their lives. And so, that's an example of economic power that we need to be pursuing. Your county's going to pay somebody one way or the other. They are paying somebody. They may as well be paying your tribe. So political, social, and economic power does not include war fighting. It doesn't include AR-15s. No, we're not talking about anything like that. But man, if you want to, that's the ultimate flex. And the left is so far ahead of us on this that I'm really concerned that I'm really concerned that if we don't grow that kind of soft power, we're going to lose.
Yeah. Well, Mike, again, I just want to thank you for being here. I really strongly recommend. I've been a member of Forward Observer for years. I've known Mike for years. I've read his intelligence briefings, and they've seem to be spot on. I've gained a lot from them, just developing our own area study. So I highly recommend that. First of all, you get the SHTF book that's available on his website, Forward Observer. Also, you can pre-purchase the other book, let me get it here, get the name correct, the Area Intelligence Handbook. You can pre-purchase that off his website. I strongly recommend you do it. Those will be two books in your permanent library. Mike, I want to thank you for being here today, because I know you bring a perspective a lot of people don't bring. And I wish you well. Hope to have you back here again soon. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And can I just add one thing?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we took the pre-sale down for the Area Intelligence Handbook, but if you go to forwardobserver.com/book, you can sign up for an email. And then once we do actually get it published, it'll be in Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the other places. Or you can, buy it from us if you prefer not to buy it from those other guys. We'll send everyone an email out and let you know some details about the book.
Again, thank you for being here. This is Robert Griswold, ReadyMadeResources.com. God bless. And again, look forward to having another program with you, Mike. So we'll sign off now. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Heroes Nation Podcast, a BMG production.
Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum has said, "You will own nothing and you will love it." And that's represented by what's going on across the planet today, where the economy of the world is in free fall, and nowhere is it more in evidence than with our own President Biden deliberately trying to sabotage what we have. access to food, other resources. So Americans are in a unique position, really for the first time in our history. We're going to have to provide for ourselves or subject ourselves to the whim of the government. Do you really trust a government to feed you that left 1,000 Americans behind enemy lines in Afghanistan? I don't think so. So where do you go? When you ask the question, who's the best prepper out there today? There's only one answer. Ready Made Resources and Robert Griswold. I call him King Prepper, and that's how a lot of people think of him. You have everything there you'd want, from night vision to storable food, how to prepare cooking in emergency situations, books and videos on how to prepare alternative energy, communication, first aid that you wouldn't think of, natural antibiotics, you name it. Bob has it. Now, here's the good thing about Bob Griswold that no one else does but him. You don't have to buy anything to talk to him. If you're not sure where to start with your preparation, no obligation phone call directly to Bob. You can talk to him for free. Most people will charge you an arm and a leg for a half-hour conversation. That's not Bob Griswold. He cares about helping America get prepared. Go to readymaderesources.com, or you can call the number directly at 800-627-3809. Again, that contact information, readymaderesources.com, for the best prepping outfit in the country, or call Bob Griswold directly, 800-627-3809.